This word here, time, ladies. And rumor has it, I don't know if this is true or not, but word on the street is many of you, a few of you, or many children in today's society cannot tell time with a non-digital clock. That's really not going to be my concern. If you, by the 5th grade level, can't tell me when you look at my clock over there what time it is, you really need to go home to your parents and say, please teach me, because it is a skill that
It's like, it's 10:59. 4:59.
However, this is the time where you don't have to be yelling out here. But when we talk about time, we have these sort of things, and I don't know, when you look at how they developed our time, what do you think? Because at some point, God created the earth, and he did shoot at us that there is such a thing as a day. He did put one little thing a day. But somebody had to sit down and say, okay, I'm going to take a day and cut it into
Half a day.
no.
An hour.
Yeah. Somebody at some time said, I'm going to take a day and I'm going to make that how many hours? 24 hours. Did they have to pick 24 hours? I don't know. Why didn't they pick 100 hours? And then every hour would be really fast. I don't know. But probably back then, when the earth was created, days were okay. I'll see you tomorrow. And then you showed up sometime the next day. It didn't have to be a regular time. But then somebody said, well, we're going to take one of those hours because we need to get a little bit, because an hour is kind of a long time to wait for somebody. We're going to take an hour and we're going to chop it into which is, and again, I don't know, why didn't they pick 100? Why would somebody pick, And I suppose if you think back to when early, thousands of years ago, even in Jesus' time or before, they didn't have watches, they didn't have wind-up little clocks probably. They based everything on the sun and where its position was in the sky.
Why do that?
So they probably didn't say, meet me at my house at 3 o'clock. They would say, meet me at sunrise, sunset, or halfway, just after whatever it was. But somebody then decided that minutes need to be cut into
Seconds.
And again they picked 60 seconds. And the problem with this whole time thing, kids, is usually when you guys deal with numbers, everything is in, we use our little base 10 thing where, there's 10, like money. Money's based on tens. 10 pennies make a dime, and then 10 of those make $1 or whatever. The problem with this is you can't use the same rules with this because it doesn't work the same way. Like, let's look at a subtraction problem. If I have 1 hour and 15 minutes, and from that I am subtracting, 35 minutes, I can't take 35 from 15, so I have to borrow like normal math. But the problem with that is, since there's not 10 minutes in an hour, I can't just put a 10 up here or add 10 to this. I have to know that there are how many minutes in an hour? 60. So if I take an hour away from here and change it into minutes, I have to add 60 minutes onto this, therefore making this 75 minutes. And then I have to do my subtraction, which just makes everybody all upset and armed because it doesn't work the exact same way.
Why didn't we just make
I don't know why the guy that sat down and said, let's make this whatever. If you get smaller than a second, which we do now, then we just start dividing it into tenths. There's a tenth of a second, or 100th of a second, or 1,000th of a second. You watch the Olympics and some guy wins by 100th of a second. That's a fraction of a second. Okay, and then let's not forget about. We just have kind of cracked the iceberg here. Now, as we go the other way. The next unit bigger than a day is
a week.
A week.
What about milliseconds?
Now there is a good reason, and this is, another proof of our Bible here. Where does our week come from? Why did somebody pick Why did we pick 7 days to make a week? Frankie? Well, it took him 6 days, and then on the 7th day, he rested. So they said, well, hey, let's group things into weeks. 7 days in a week, and then we might as well do this. A couple other things in a year. We got a couple things yet to do. A year is how many weeks? 52. Let's get that straight. A year is also how many days? And here's where you have to be careful. It is exactly, Jordan says, the exact number is, we usually round, we say it is 365 days.
Or 366.
Well, yeah, but in reality, it is 365 and 1/4 days. It doesn't match up exactly right, so whoever decided to do that. And then every once in a while we have what we call that leap year, because we're a quarter of a year off. We have to add a day every 4 years. 4 years or 3 years? 4 years.
So next year's a leap year.
Is it? I don't know.
For sure. I would hate to learn on a leap year.
Now, in addition to that, boys and girls and children of all ages, 1 year, what huge event happens in a year? Besides you having a birthday. Now, stole your thunder there. You thought you were going to be pretty clever there. What actually happens in a year, Daddy? Yeah, Christmas happens every year. No. I want an event. Why do we make a year 365 days? What big thing in the world happens once every 365 days that somebody said, let's make this a year? Brian?
We drop a giant disco ball in New York City.
Yes, the giant disco ball. Anybody else there? Julia?
The eclipse?
No, there's not an eclipse every year. Trevor?
No, 4th of July.
4th of July, no, every year, the Earth, goes around the sun once. Every year the Earth goes around the sun, so here we are spinning in our little, planetary system, and here's the sun. It's that hot ball of wax that's in the middle. And here's the Earth. In 1 year, the Earth does its little orbit, comes around the sun, and comes back to the same place that it started with. That's where our year. As opposed to a day. Why do we make something a day besides it being morning and night? The day, but what event happens in a day? Colton? School. Let's go with event with the Earth here. Brooklyn? The sun does come up. What makes the sun come up? Victoria?
The Earth's orbit?
Nah, yeah, it's actually more the Earth's rotate. In a day, the Earth makes one revolution. I'm sure you've had this before. That's what makes the sun come up. The sun actually doesn't move around the Earth. The sun is moving, but it's moving in a bigger path. In other words, this, while the Earth is going around the sun in orbit, it is also spinning around on its axis in a big swirly motion. And in 1 day, the sun, if the sun is facing here, in 1 day, the Earth makes one spin around its axis and ends up at the same spot. That's why the sun goes up and the sun goes down. Now moving on to more exciting sort of stuff. So wait, where did we end up with? 1 month. Unfortunately, and again, this is a goofy thing about time for people who've made our little calendar system. How many days are in a month?
30, 31, 28.
Right. How many months have 28 days?
Or 29.
No, they all have 28 days. days.
Oh yeah.
A month either has 28, 30, or 31 days. Some have more than 28, but they all have 20. And then a year equals 12 months. Oh yeah, unless it's leap year, I guess there's 29 and Feb once in a while. I don't know about that. See, all these things that make time just so many crazy things there. Oh, by the way, here, I forgot. If this is one leap year, sometimes the book, just to confuse you, the year that actually has the 365 days in there, they call it a common year. So if they ever say the word common year, that means this. Now we have to get to bigger theories. If you put 10 years together, which most of you just celebrated your this amount of things there, saying it is
A decade?
1 decade. If you put 10 decades together, 10 decades together, which is the same as 100 years. We have a special name for that. 10 decades, 100 years is a, Andrew?
Century.
1 century. If you take 10 centuries, which are the same as having 100 decades, which would be the same as having 1,000 years, which I believe you guys missed the whole. See, if you were alive in the year 2000, not only were you entering into a new year, you were entering into a new decade, you're entering into a new century, but you're also entering into 1,000 years. Nathan, is a millennium.
What? The millennium.
1 millennium. Which confuses people because you put the word mill in front of that and people think millions. That's not the case when we use the metric system. The word M-I-L-L is 1,000. Dec is 10. Cent is 100. A century is 100 years. A millennium is 1,000 years. What else we got here? Take a look, will you please, at page 172 in your book. Look at page 172, please. Just to make sure you have some calendar skills, the book throws at you like example number 2. If you're looking at that calendar, it says, according to this calendar, June 8, 2014 is what day of the week? Hopefully you know enough to find where the number 8 is on the calendar. Look up, because our calendars, okay, S, M, when we look at a calendar, we split it up into this. That is quite a calendar. June 8th fell right here. Actually, I'm sorry. I should put the 8 down here. Actually, it should go down another one, actually. That's good. No, that's good. June 8th falls on a Sunday. On a Sunday. Now, why is Sunday the first day of the week? Why did somebody not make Monday the first day of the week? Which, by the way, what day of the week did God rest? Oh, we have some contention. God actually rested, I believe, on the Sabbath day. Oh. Which means, children, if God rested on the seventh day, technically He rested on the Saturday, Sabbath day. And that is why in the Jewish faith, even Jesus' time, they did no work on this day. We, after Jesus came, we switched our Sabbath or our day of rest or our day to take off and to worship God on Sunday. Does anybody know why? Again, we just keep guessing at these things.
Because he rose from the dead.
Yep. A couple reasons. Number one, Sunday was the day, Easter Sunday was the day, and God has always told us that He wants the first of everything we have, and since this is the first day of the week, you know, we pick Sunday.
Wasn't it the day when the sun came out? Or
The sun came out on a Sunday.
when God was making the world?
In the beginning was the Word, was the you have to remember, God created light before He created the sun. Colin, what's your question?
Why did the guy who created these days make them all different letters so you don't get confused?
I know. Why did He go with, well, and you have to remember, we stick with this as this, but not every culture in the world uses our same calendar. They have different names. There's Spanish names. I don't know. Do they start with the same letter in Spanish? Also, under your time, we also have to do this. Things get a little dicey here. Make sure you're very, very clear. Write these numbers down here. We've got 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock. Here's another pet peeve of mine. I don't know why did the guy, when he was putting down hours, why did he have to start all over again? Because this just confuses us. Because then we go 1 o'clock again, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock. This would have saved you a lot of time. You wouldn't have to write all these down. 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock. And then after you have those numbers in there, we're going to start right here. This one right here, we are going to call midnight. When most of you should be asleep, I hope you are. Midnight, at night. Is that AM or PM?
And
What?
there's 12 o'clock in the day.
What's the consensus? Who said AM? Who says PM?
I say both.
Yeah. Midnight at night is definitely the AM part of the day. Okay. I don't know if it tells us why it's called AM, anti-meridian, whatever it is. And all of these morning hours we call AMs. Until you get to this 12 o'clock here, which is we call noon. And that is when the PM hours begin. Okay, so you come to school at about 8 o'clock. Here's where school starts. At 8 a.m. and you go home at about 3 o'clock p.m. And again, this throws us off when we're trying to tell differences in times or how long it is between something, because you start using the same numbers and then blah, blah, blah. Everybody gets all confused. This is still p.m. Okay? And because that can be confusing, when you go into the Army, which I would recommend for many of you, it's a good experience. No. They use military time, which throws away all the confusion on that. What do they do in the military?
1 through 20. 1 through 24, actually.
All right, what they do is this, okay? They call this 0 hours. That's the very beginning of AM. 100, 200, 300, and then when you get 1200 hours would be noon, and then instead of using this, they just keep adding an hour. So this is 1300 hours, 1400 hours, 1500 hours, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. They actually don't use 24 because they have 0 hours. This is 2300 hours. And sometimes you can set your watch for military time so that if you get a number that's bigger than 12, you just have to subtract 12 from it, and that's the time. You know, if somebody said be at my house at 2000 hours, you would just take 12 away from that, and that's the same as our 8 o'clock at night. Because when you're doing like battle sort of things, and somebody tells you to be somewhere at 8 o'clock, you don't want to figure out is that 8 o'clock in the morning or 8 o'clock at night, because then trouble, miscommunication is a bad thing. Now, here we go. Because all that talk we have to do here, we have to talk about what's called elapsed time. This is where time gets very, 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 very confusing. How about write down this problem? Raven and her friends went to a movie that was a movie. A movie is 2 hours, 5 minutes long. If it started at, it ended at 9:20. It ended at 9:20. What time would it have started? What time did it start? So here's the deal, and again, this is why time gets a little confusing, but it ended right here at 9:20. What time would it have had to have started? Well, it was 2 hours long, so you would back up 2 hours. You back up 2 hours from 9:20. I mean, you could, in here, you could do this as a subtraction problem. You'd have to subtract 2 hours and what? 5 minutes. And do it as a subtraction problem, which ends up being 15 and 7, 15. Or you could think, I'm going to back up 2 hours from 9, that would get me at 7:20, and then back up 5 more minutes and get 7:15. And that one's not so bad because you're not going between AMs and PMs. When you start doing that, things get a little dicey. Let's find one of those because I'm excited about that. How about this one? What time? A movie went from 3:15. A movie went from 3:15 to 5 o'clock. How long is that? How long is it from 5:15 to 3:15? Now here, if you're going to do that as a subtraction problem, you could do that. You take 5 o'clock minus 3:15, and there's where you'd have some trouble because you can't take 15 minutes away from nothing, so you're going to have to do what?
Borrow.
If you borrow from the 5, how many minutes is an hour?
60.
60, yeah, you can't put ones up there because that's not what it is. It is 60 minutes. This becomes a 4. And then you can do your subtracting here. 5, 10, 5, 4, and then 4 from 3 is 1. It would be 1 hour, 45 minutes. There is no easy way to do time, and sometimes you could just think, if I add an hour to 3, I get 4:15, and then I have to add 45 minutes to get to that. Time can be very, very, very confusing. Take a look, please, 174. Oh, where has the time gone? It would be a shame if we didn't have this on today. We'll see how this goes. Jordan, be careful. Letter, look at page 174. let's see if we can answer those lesson practice problems together. Let's see, letter A, Andrew, if you have 4 centuries, how many years would that be? 400 years. Letter B, according to the calendar in example 2, which means you gotta look back, what date is the 3rd Thursday in June? So go back to page 172. Look at the 3rd Thursday. If they ask you the dates, people, you cannot just give the number. You have to do the whole thing. The month, the number, the year, and it is what? Sam, me? That's exactly what I have. June 19, 2014. Letter C, a leap year. Jacob Ballman has how many days? A leap year is how many days? Jacob? 366. Letter D. Oh, what is the name for 1/10 of a century? Take a century and cut it into 10 equal pieces. It is, Trevor?
A decade?
A decade, yep. There's 10 decades in a century, so a 10th of a century. 2 minutes after 8 in the evening. So this is where if they give you time, you always have to put the AM/PM there. 2 minutes after 8 is, Addie?
8:02 p.m.
8:02 p.m. Now here, depending on what part of the country, some people like for letter F say 8:45, some people say 9:15. What time is 8:45 in the morning? 8:45, which is 15 minutes before 9. Ellie?
8:45.
Yeah, Mrs. Woods must have worked hard with you on that. Letter G, what time is 20 minutes after noon? 20 minutes after noon. Afternoon. Addison?
2:20 p.m.
I'm sorry, what?
2:20 p.m.
Well, noon is not 12:20 p.m. Yes, afternoon. Ooh, 30 minutes after midnight? 30 minutes after midnight? Julia?
12:30 p.m.
12:30. No, midnight is. Remember?
Oh,
Yeah. Midnight is AM, so 20 minutes after it would still be the AM. What's 9:15 in the morning? Victoria?
8:45.
No, not 9:15, 9:15.
9:15 a.m.
9:15 a.m. If it is morning, what time is shown by that clock there? Here's where we check our non-digital clock. What time is that clock show? Tyler? The clock in the book, what time is that? Yeah, AM or PM?
a.m.
AM. Well done. What time would be shown on the clock 2 hours later? Oh, 2 hours later. Brian?
It would be 1:25
AM or PM?
p.m.
PM. 2 hours earlier? Colton?
9:25.
AM or PM? AM. And we already did letter L, children. It's a shame, unfortunately, that we